At the center of this tragic story were three individuals whose lives became inextricably intertwined. Olivia Holbrook, a charismatic local businesswoman; Tyler Tanner, a devoted elementary school teacher; and Clayton Reeves, a newcomer with a mysterious past. Their fates collided in a perfect storm of desire, jealousy, and deceit that would leave two of them dead and the third forever changed. Olivia Holbrook was born and raised in Millbrook, the only child of Robert and Elizabeth Holbrook. From an early age, it was clear that Olivia was destined for success. Her father, a prominent local attorney, instilled in her a strong work ethic and an unwavering ambition. Her mother, a former beauty queen turned socialite, taught her the art of charm and social grace. Growing up, Olivia excelled in both academics and athletics. She was valedictorian of her graduating class and attended an Ivy League university, where she studied business. But there was another side to Olivia that few people saw. Behind her winning smile and easy charm lay a calculating mind and an insatiable hunger for control. She was a master manipulator, skilled at identifying people's weaknesses and exploiting them for her own gain. Despite her success, Olivia was never satisfied. She craved constant validation and attention, which manifested in a string of romantic conquests. As Olivia approached her mid-30s, she began to feel the pressure to settle down, at least outwardly. She knew that having a husband would enhance her image as a respectable businesswoman and pillar of the community. It was with this mindset that Olivia entered into relationships with both Tyler Tanner and Clayton Reeves. In Tyler, she saw the perfect candidate for the role of Mr. Holbrook, attractive, well-liked, and from a good family. Clayton, on the other hand, represented excitement and passion, a secret indulgence she had no intention of giving up. Tyler Tanner was the epitome of the boy next door. Born and raised in Millbrook, he was the middle child in a family of 5. His parents, Michael and Linda Tanner, were pillars of the community. Tyler's childhood was marked by warmth and stability, and this nurturing environment shaped him into a compassionate and empathetic young man. After completing his degree in education, Tyler secured a position teaching 3rd grade at Millbrook Elementary School. It was at a local charity event, organized to raise funds for the school's new library, that Tyler first met Olivia Holbrook. He was immediately drawn to her charisma and confident demeanor. Their courtship was a whirlwind romance, seemingly plucked from the pages of a fairy tale. Olivia wooed Tyler with grand gestures, surprise weekend getaways, lavish gifts, and romantic dinners at upscale restaurants. For Tyler, who had always led a relatively simple life, the attention was intoxicating. He fell deeply in love, believing he had found his soulmate. Little did he know that Olivia's affections were divided. Clayton Reeves arrived in Millbrook like a gust of wind, stirring up the quiet town with his mysterious past and alluring presence. Unlike Olivia and Tyler, Clayton was an outsider, having grown up in a series of foster homes across the state of New York. His childhood was marked by instability and loneliness, experiences that shaped him into a complex and often unpredictable adult. Clayton's transient lifestyle left him with a deep-seated fear of abandonment and a desperate need for love and acceptance. Despite his challenges, Clayton was fiercely intelligent and ambitious. His academic success earned him a scholarship to a prestigious university in New York City, where he studied psychology. After graduation, Clayton worked as a consultant, using his skills to help businesses grow. It was in this capacity that he met Olivia Holbrook. The attraction between them was immediate and electric. In Olivia, Clayton saw everything he had ever wanted: success, stability, and the promise of love. For the first time in his life, he allowed himself to hope for a happy ending. However, Clayton's fragile sense of security was shattered when he discovered Olivia's engagement to Tyler. This betrayal triggered all of Clayton's deepest fears and insecurities, setting in motion a tragic chain of events. As summer turned to fall in Millbrook, the lives of Olivia, Tyler, and Clayton became increasingly entangled in a complex web of desire, deceit, and jealousy. Olivia, ever the skilled manipulator, carefully navigated her relationships with both men, feeding each of them just enough attention and affection to keep them invested. With Tyler, Olivia played the role of the devoted fiancée. She attended local events by his side, charmed his family at Sunday dinners, and made grand plans for their future together. Tyler, basking in the glow of their engagement, excitedly shared details of their upcoming wedding with anyone who would listen. Meanwhile, Olivia's encounters with Clayton took place in the shadows. They met in out-of-the-way restaurants in neighboring towns or at Clayton's secluded cottage. During these stolen moments, Olivia showered Clayton with the passion and intensity she carefully held back from Tyler, feeding Clayton's hopes with vague promises of a future together. As the weeks passed, tension began to build between Tyler and Clayton, even though Tyler remained unaware of the true nature of Clayton's relationship with Olivia. Clayton, consumed by his feelings for Olivia and racked with guilt over betraying Tyler, became increasingly volatile. His behavior swung between desperation and barely concealed hostility. Olivia observed the growing friction between the two men with a mixture of anxiety and satisfaction. While she worried about her carefully constructed double life unraveling, she also reveled in the knowledge that two men were competing for her affections. As autumn progressed and the date of Olivia and Tyler's wedding drew nearer, the situation became increasingly untenable. Clayton's demands for Olivia to leave Tyler grew more frequent and desperate, while Tyler remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. Little did any of them know that their actions over the next few months would shatter the peaceful facade of Millbrook and change their lives forever. On a crisp October morning, the day of Olivia and Tyler's wedding arrived. The entire town of Millbrook seemed to be in attendance, filling the picturesque white church to capacity. Tyler, radiant in a classic black tuxedo, walked down the aisle with confidence, his face beaming with joy and love. Olivia stood at the altar, outwardly the picture of a happy bride, but those who knew her well might have noticed a flicker of unease in her eyes. As she recited her vows, promising to love and cherish Tyler for all eternity, her thoughts couldn't help but stray to Clayton. Unbeknownst to the happy couple and their guests, Clayton was outside the church, hidden from view but close enough to hear the ceremony. Each word of love and devotion that echoed from within the building was like a dagger to his heart. In the weeks following Olivia and Tyler's wedding, Clayton Reeves spiraled into a pit of despair and obsession. The life he had imagined for himself, a future with Olivia, had been snatched away, leaving him feeling betrayed and discarded. His fragile psyche, already damaged by years of abandonment and instability, began to fracture under the weight of his grief and anger. At first, Clayton tried to move on. He threw himself into his work, but everywhere he went, he was confronted with reminders of Olivia and Tyler's happiness. The newlyweds were the talk of the town, their smiling faces seeming to mock Clayton at every turn. As his pain deepened, Clayton's behavior became increasingly erratic. But it was Clayton's growing obsession with Tyler that truly marked his descent into madness. He began stalking the young teacher, following him to and from work, watching his house from a distance. Clayton convinced himself that if he could just understand Tyler, figure out what made him so special in Olivia's eyes, he could win her back. As weeks turned into months, Clayton's fantasies grew darker. He began to imagine scenarios where Tyler was out of the picture, leaving the path clear for him to reclaim Olivia's affections. At first, these were harmless daydreams, but gradually, Clayton's thoughts turned to murder. He spent hours researching different methods, weighing the pros and cons of each with a detached, almost clinical precision. As winter settled over Millbrook, Clayton's plans began to crystallize. He had chosen his method, a staged hit-and-run accident that would leave no trace of his involvement. In his deluded mind, he had convinced himself that eliminating Tyler was not just for his own benefit, but for Olivia's as well. He truly believed that she was trapped in an unhappy marriage, and that he would be liberating her. On a foggy Wednesday morning in February, Tyler left his house for his daily jog, just as he had done countless times before. The streets were quiet, most of Millbrook's residents still tucked away in their warm beds. Unbeknownst to Tyler, Clayton was waiting, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. As Tyler's form appeared through the mist, Clayton took a deep breath and turned the key in the ignition. The next few moments passed in a blur of screeching tires, a muffled scream, and the sickening thud of impact. Clayton, operating on autopilot, quickly drove away from the scene, leaving Tyler's crumpled body on the side of the road. It was a jogger who found Tyler an hour later. Despite the best efforts of paramedics, Tyler was pronounced dead at the scene. The news spread through Millbrook like wildfire, leaving the town reeling in shock and grief. In the immediate aftermath, Clayton's plans seemed to work perfectly. The police initially treated the incident as a tragic hit-and-run accident. Clayton had meticulously planned his alibi, making sure he was seen at a 24-hour diner in a neighboring town both before and after the time of Tyler's death. Olivia, upon hearing the news of her husband's death, put on a convincing display of grief. She wept openly at the funeral, leaning on friends and family for support. To all outward appearances, she was a devastated widow, struggling to come to terms with her loss. But as the initial shock wore off and the investigation deepened, cracks began to appear in the facade. Detective Richard Montague, assigned to the case, sensed that there was more to Tyler's death than a simple accident. As he dug deeper, he began to uncover the tangled web of relationships that had led to this tragic event. Meanwhile, Clayton watched from the sidelines, a mix of guilt and triumph warring within him. He had achieved his goal. Tyler was gone. But as the days passed and Olivia remained distant, doubt began to creep into his mind. Had he made a terrible mistake? As winter gave way to spring, Clayton's initial elation at having eliminated his rival began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Despite his expectations, Olivia had not rushed into his arms in the wake of Tyler's death. In fact, she had become increasingly distant, avoiding his calls and making excuses to cancel their planned meetings. Frustrated and confused, Clayton decided to confront Olivia at her office after hours. As he approached the building, he noticed a light on in her window. Peering inside, he saw Olivia in an intimate embrace with a man he did not recognize. The sight sent Clayton reeling, his world crumbling around him. In that moment, the full weight of what he had done came crashing down on Clayton. He had murdered an innocent man, destroyed countless lives, all for a woman who had never truly cared for him. The realization was devastating. Overwhelmed by guilt and anger, Clayton stormed into Olivia's office, catching her and the unknown man by surprise. What followed was a heated confrontation, with Clayton unleashing years of pent-up pain and rage. He accused Olivia of using him, of manipulating his feelings to get rid of Tyler. Olivia, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking, didn't deny his accusations. Instead, she coldly informed Clayton that he had served his purpose and was no longer needed. She threatened to expose his role in Tyler's death if he didn't disappear from her life for good. Shattered and desperate, Clayton fled the office, his mind racing. He now realized the true extent of Olivia's manipulation and his own terrible mistake. As he drove home in a daze, Clayton was unaware that his confrontation with Olivia had been witnessed by someone else, someone who would soon set in motion the final act of this tragic play. The man Clayton had seen with Olivia was Richard Chen, a brilliant young lawyer who had recently joined Olivia's firm. Richard had been drawn into an affair with Olivia, seduced by her charm and the promise of career advancement. However, unlike Clayton, Richard was not blind to Olivia's true nature. On the night of Clayton's confrontation with Olivia, Richard had hidden himself in an adjoining room, overhearing every word of their heated exchange. The revelation of Olivia's involvement in her husband's death left him cold with horror and disgust. In the days that followed, Richard found himself grappling with a moral dilemma. He knew he should go to the police with what he had learned, but fear of professional repercussions and his own complicity in the affair held him back. As he observed Olivia continuing to play the role of grieving widow, his revulsion grew. Determined to uncover the full truth, Richard began his own covert investigation. He meticulously combed through Olivia's files and emails, slowly piecing together the extent of her deceit. What he discovered went far beyond Tyler's murder, revealing a pattern of fraud and manipulation that spanned years. With each new revelation, Richard's resolve strengthened. He knew what he had to do. Armed with the evidence he had gathered, Richard confronted Olivia in her office late one evening. He laid out everything he had discovered, from her manipulation of Clayton to her fraudulent business practices. Olivia, realizing the precariousness of her situation, attempted to charm and threaten Richard into silence. But Richard was prepared. He had secretly recorded their entire conversation, capturing Olivia's implicit admission of guilt. As he turned to leave, intending to take his evidence to the police, Olivia snapped. In a moment of panic and rage, she attacked Richard, attempting to wrestle the recording device from his hands. What Olivia didn't know was that Richard, haunted by the fate of Tyler Tanner Holbrook, had come prepared. In the struggle, he managed to reach into his briefcase and pull out a small pistol. A shot rang out, echoing through the empty office building. Olivia Holbrook, the woman who had manipulated so many, who had indirectly caused the death of her husband and the ruin of Clayton Reeves, crumpled to the floor. Richard stood over her, the smoking gun still in his hand, a mix of shock and grim satisfaction on his face. As sirens wailed in the distance, Richard calmly sat down to wait for the police. He knew that his actions would have consequences, but he also knew that the truth would finally come to light. Olivia Holbrook's reign of deception was over. The shot that killed Olivia Holbrook reverberated through Millbrook, setting off a chain reaction that would finally bring the full story of Tyler's death to light. As Richard Chen was taken into custody, the true extent of Olivia's manipulation began to unravel. In the wake of Olivia Holbrook's death, the investigation into Tyler's murder took on new urgency. Detective Montague, armed with the evidence Richard had gathered, began to piece together the full picture of events that had transpired over the past year. Clayton Reeves, racked with guilt and fear, finally broke down under questioning. He confessed to his role in Tyler's death, providing a detailed account of his actions and motivations. His testimony painted a damning picture of Olivia's manipulation and the extent to which she had orchestrated the events leading to her husband's murder. Clayton, having confessed to Tyler's murder, was sentenced to life in prison. Richard's case was more complex. He was convicted of manslaughter, but received a reduced sentence due to the circumstances surrounding Olivia's death. The tragic tale of Olivia Holbrook, Tyler Tanner, Clayton Reeves, and Richard Chen would be remembered for years to come, a somber reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath even the most picturesque surfaces.